All right, welcome back. So the genius, this section, all right, this is the first section in this chapter. We're talking about forms, okay? And actually, we'll not be talking about form the traditional way it used to be done, right? Because these days, we no longer use form the traditional way, all right? And that is why we'll just be focusing on the elements of the form, okay? Because at the end of the whole thing, we'll be using React.js, frameworks like React.js, Vue.js, AngularJS to actually submit our forms, okay? But basically, forms are just a way of um, we is a way that we use to get data from users. If you want to get registration details, sign up details, login details, if you want to get details from user, you want to get data from users, you actually use form to collect it. But these days, we no longer use form the traditional way. Okay, so that is why we'll just be focusing on the types, the elements that are used within the form. And when we start talking about JavaScript, well, in the JavaScript class, we'll talk about using JavaScript to validate and also using JavaScript to collect. There's something we call Form Data API. How do we collect this data that the user would actually put in? So in here, we'll be talking about the different elements that we use to collect data. Then when we go to JavaScript and Form Data API and also validation with JavaScript, we'll talk of how we can validate user input and also how we can actually get their data and submit to the server, okay? So in this session, we'll start with the input element, okay? But basically, I'm also going to show you the basic structure of a form, all right? So the input element, what is the basis of input element? Now, input elements are versatile tools for collecting user input, all right? They come in various types and serve different purposes. So we'll be taking a look at most of the types of inputs, but in the next session we talk of more advanced there's something like the checkbox, something like the radio button, the file. We will have separate sections for them. Okay, we'll have a separate section for them and talk about them extensively. So we'll just be talking about the basic input element and also most of the different types and their purposes. Okay, so let's explore each type of input and its attribute to get a comprehensive understanding. So this is the basic structure of the basic syntax of an input element looks like this. Okay, but the thing is that it has to be inside of a form. So this is the input element, but let me take you to code. Okay, so now this is form. Let me take everything out. Okay, so the form element, okay, you start it with form like this, okay? This is everything here. So the input element will be inside like this, okay? All right. Then you can actually, by default, the type is test, but you can actually still provide, these are the different types, okay? We'll not talk about button, checkbox. We'll talk of them individually, okay, on their own sections, okay? But we have different types, but the default is test. So what it means is that we're only going to collect just test. You can also give it an attribute called name. Let's say we just say we are using this to collect the first name of a user, so we can just give it name like this, okay? So this is a basic form, all right? Now this is the basic form. Of course, we used to have something like what we say action, all right? And we can do something like this. Then it could be whatever.php or something like that, okay? So, but we just leave this like this and we also do the method. So the thing is this, these days we no longer run forms like this. I can't even remember writing any form like this anymore. All right. This day, what we do is that at the end of it, we'll have the type, the button, okay? We'll have the button. We could just do button like this, or we could use we'll talk about button too, all right? We'll talk about button on its own submit. We'll talk about button, okay? So we can say the type of this button is submit, all right? Okay, so now we are focusing on input element, okay? We use input element to collect data from the user, okay? So we use input element to collect data from the user. So what do we do? If I open this on the live server now, this is my form and this is the input. So I can actually type in anything here and then I can submit. But of course, normally, this is not normally we're going to write some JavaScript code to take this submit whenever we click the submit, but that's by the way. That's not what we are talking about in this section. So we're looking at the input element. We use this to collect. Let's say I can say first name is what? Paulson. And when I submit this, all right, I will submit this to the sub. You can see, look at the URL. Look at the URL. It is here. Although we are using post, we are using get instead of post, okay? But don't worry, this is actually beyond what we are talking about. So what we want to focus on is how can we use input element to collect data and the different types of input element. So if I go back to our slide, now you can see that we have the type to be test, which is the default. Even if you don't put this type, if you don't use this type attribute, the default is also test. So this is the name. This is actually a unique name for the input element. So now what are the common input attributes? Let's take a look at one by one. You can have ID. This is a global attribute that every element can have. It is used to uniquely identify an input field and also used for linking labels to inputs. In the next section, when we talk about labels, we're going to show you how you can actually link labels to the input. We'll talk about that whenever we talk about the label in its own section. So you use ID in case you want to style that in case you want to style that field with CSS, you can use ID, and you can also use ID to link this label. So this is an attribute that you can actually have. Okay, we also have the name. Now this name is used to name the input which is submitted with the form data. So basically what we are concentrating now is the input elements and their attributes. There's something we call form data, and we'll take a look at it in JavaScript when we talk about the form data API. All right. Linking labels to inputs. We'll talk about it when we start talking about labels. Okay. So, but these are the attributes and these are the common purposes. The value sets the initial value of the input. So if I want to set the initial value of the input, I can use the value. So if I go back to code and I say after name, I'm using this attribute value. I can say the initial value is the global genius. Okay. So now this will be the initial value. If I save, go to the browser, this will be the initial value. So if I start, I can delete it or I can delete it. Okay, but this will be the value. You would also make use of this when we start working with form data, especially when we start working with React and stuff like that. Okay, so but this value is what we could actually see. Now let's say, when do we use this value attribute? Let's say now we want to edit user's profile. Of course, for you to edit anything, any data like that, you have to fetch data from the database. Then, of course, you have to show them what the initial data used to be. So you can now set the value to be the initial data. Let's say I want to change my profile. Of course, they will fetch in my data, and my first name will be shown on the input element. So I can now change it. Do you understand? So this is one way. But whenever you have this attribute, you are setting the initial value for the input element. Placeholder, this is a text displayed in the input when it is empty. So it is like we use it to give more information to the user. We can say, I think I'll just have to remove this value. I can just say, I'll say placeholder, and I can say enter your name. All right, so this is what the user will see. Okay, this is what the user, if I save now and go to the browser, this is what the user will see. You can see that it is faint, but once I start typing, it will go out. All right, if it is empty, this placeholder will show, but once I start typing, you will use this to give more, it's more like guidance, okay, guiding the user on what you want them to do with this input. So here we want them to enter their name. So it will help them to understand. It is basically for user experience, to show them that, okay, we want them to use this to enter their name. When you mark a field as required, okay, it is mandatory. So that means if it is empty, the form will not submit. So if we go back, and say that we want this input field to be required, all right? If we say we want it to be required, if we mark it as required, all right, we cannot submit this. I save and I'll go to the browser. We cannot submit this without entering a name. So if I click on submit, you can see it says, please fill out this form because I have made it required. So if the user, if this is empty, if you try to submit, all right, the browser will not allow it because this input field is marked as required. So you must enter something. Once you enter something and submit, you cannot submit, okay? But if you don't enter anything, since you have marked it as required, it will not submit, all right? So that is it. We also have disabled. If you disable the input, it will make it non-interactive. So if I go back to code now and say disabled, the user will no longer use it. If I save and go back to the browser, you can't enter anything. Look at it, it's disabled. It is non-interactive. All right. We don't want the user to do so. Where do we use something like this? Whenever you have data that you don't want the users to edit, you can mark it as disabled. Okay. All right. We have a couple of them. It's just that we cannot mention all of them. So, but how do you know if you want to check these things? You can if I say A now, all right, these are possible attributes. These are possible attributes that starts with A. If I say B, they are just so plenty. If I say C, they are plenty. They are just so plenty, okay? So, but we are just talking and taking a look at few ones that we use mostly, the common ones. When you say read only, the user cannot, it prevents the user from modifying the value, but it keeps it visible. So let's say now we don't want the user to modify the value, and we can say, we can give value as, if I say the value is person, and I mark it as read only, all right? If I mark it as read only, the user cannot change it. They can only read it. It is read only. So if I go back, the user cannot edit. They cannot edit it. It is read only. All right? They cannot edit it. They cannot. I'm trying to edit it and I can't edit it because I mark it as read only. We only want the user to read it. We don't want the user to modify it, okay? So we also have the autocomplete, okay? Now, why this autocomplete actually, it controls whether the input should have autocomplete enabled on or off. So when you say autocomplete, all right, if we go back and mark this as autocomplete, if you mark it as autocomplete, we mark it as autocomplete on, all right, it will give us autocompletion, sorry. So when we are typing, all right, if we have previous, if I say, we already have something before, if I say P, it is giving us autocomplete, okay? But by default, it's actually autocomplete. So I can go and mark it. Let me go and remove this autocomplete here. Let me make it false. Let me just remove it, all right? It is autocomplete by default. So you can actually disable it on your own. So if I go back to the browser, okay, I already have something I paused in here before. So if I say P, all right, to give me all the suggestion of the things I've entered before. So, but if I go back and say autocomplete is false, is off, all right. If I save, let's see. You see, it's no longer giving me any suggestion again. But before, it used to give me suggestions. So, but I have disabled the autocomplete, okay? But autocomplete is actually good. But for sometimes, you wouldn't want the users to, because it can actually cause some security issues, okay? So if possible, if you're very, very concerned about security, you can turn the autocomplete to be off, all right? So that it doesn't give them suggestion into other people's data. So what are the common types? We have the test, which we have seen. It is used for single line test input. All right, this is the common type. Okay, the example is this. All right, this one we have been seeing already. All right, the type of it is test. By default, it is test. So it has attribute like mass length and placeholder we have seen. So when we say mass length, it means that if we give it maximum length, Okay, this is the type we are doing. So if we give it an attribute like maximum length, it means if we say max length, it means that if we say like 3, it means that we cannot type more than 3 characters. Max length means that we cannot type more than 3 characters. If I go now and say, you see, I cannot type more than 3. I'm trying to type more than 3, but I cannot. That's maximum length, okay? We also have minimum length. We have minimum length. I can change this to minimum length. Min length, it means that I must actually have at least 3 characters. So if I go now and try to submit just one, look at it. It says, please lengthen this text to 3 characters, because I said the minimum length is 3. So if I don't, this is more of for validation. Okay, it cannot accept anything less than 3 characters. All right. So if I do more than 3, I can submit. Okay. So min, max, these are common attributes. Okay. We have already seen the placeholder. So you can also use password. You can make it type to be password. When you make it type to be password, it is going to mark characters as the user types. All right, ID for sensitive data like password. So if you don't want users to see, just like you already have this experience when you're typing in your password in any format, or they always mask it. So if once you change it to password, instead of test, you change it to password. All right. If we go now, we cannot, if you're typing anything inside, you can see it is masked already. All right. It's masked. So we don't want people to see what other people are typing. All right. But there is a way you can use your JavaScript to actually allow them to actually click on it and it will reveal what they are typing. But that will be something within another section. Okay. So we also have the type email. Once you make the type to be email, all right, it will not be valid. It would only contain valid email address. If not, it will not. There will be a problem. If we say this is email, all right. If you say this is email and save, go to the browser. If you type anything inside here that is not email, it will not. If I try to submit and it says please include at. So this is validating against email address. So if you want to collect somebody's email address, you should have to use the input type as email and it will validate it for you. So this will not submit until all right, because it does not have any @ symbol. So whenever you provide @ symbol, okay, and say Gmail, okay, you can see it has gone out. All right, so this is seen as a valid email address. Okay, so if it doesn't have this @ symbol, all right, like this, it will not validate it. Okay, so it will not allow you to submit. So there's another type. We also have the number. This number restricts input to be numeric values and can have min and maximum limits. Okay, so if you want to collect somebody's age, all right, you want them to type in numbers, not just text. So you can actually have the min, the max, and the step attribute for this. And this is what it looks like. The min says you cannot go less than this minimum. You cannot go more than this maximum. And step is like the intervals for the valid number. So let's go to code and let me show you. If I say the type is number, okay, and I will have to take this value out because it's not going to work. I can say, I will here say min, okay, and I will say mass to be 10, and I can say step. I can say I want to be increment by 1. Okay, so if I go now, go to the browser, you can see. All right, forget about the placeholder. All right, but the thing is that if I enter anything like this, it will not go. Look at it, it's not taking it. All right, so but if I enter number, all right, but if I enter, this is the minimum is 3. If I enter 1, all right, and try to submit, it will say value must be greater than 3 because I made the minimum value to be 3. If I say 19, it says value must be less than 10 because I made the maximum number to be 10. So I can actually increase by 1 because the step is 1. So you can actually change the step to be 2 if you want it to be increasing by 2. So I want you to experiment that. Okay. So the mean is for the minimum value we can take. The number type is used to collect, instead of collecting characters, okay, letters like that, we want to collect numbers, okay? So you can have the minimum or the maximum, then depending on what you want to do, the step can be the, how you can use to increase the value, the interval for valid numbers, okay? You can also use telephone to enforce a specific format. And this time around, you can use something we call the pattern. So let's say you want to collect somebody's telephone, all right? We want to collect somebody's telephone. So we mark this to be tel. All right. But the thing is that I would have to take these guys out. Okay. So since I'm collecting telephone, it will not, if I just go on like this and save, all right, it can take anything. All right. There is no pattern. But the browser understands that this is for a telephone number. All right. But if I go on now and add another attribute called pattern, I can say pattern. All right, I can say pattern, and the pattern I want it to be only numbers 0 to 9. Don't worry, when we talk about if you have watched if you have taken the class on what's it called again, regular expression, you're going to understand what we are doing here. Here we say we only want 0 to 9, and we want them to be only 3. Okay, so I can say this is the format I want. Okay, this is the format I want. I want first 3 numbers. All right, then there will be another 0 to 9. And I want to just be 3. Okay, so this is a pattern I'm using. So if I don't provide, if I go now and type in and I do not provide any pattern that looks like this, it will reject it. Okay, so if I save now, I'm saying here, this is the pattern I'm using. I'm saying here that I only want to take, this is it will look like any number from 0 to 9, but they have to be 3. Let's say 1, 2, 3. It will match this pattern, and there'll be a hyphen, another 3 numbers, hyphen, another 3 numbers. You can say A to Z, A to whatever, okay? This is the pattern. So I wouldn't want to be talking much about this pattern now because we discuss it in regular expression in JavaScript. Okay, but this is the pattern we are trying to use now. I'm also going to come to Nigerian pattern. Okay, so if I save now, if I try to enter anything inside of this, it will not take it. If I try to do anything here, if I try to submit, it say please match the requested format. So the requested format was like 1, 2, 3 hyphen 5, 6, 7 hyphen 098. This is the requested format. So if I try to save now, it goes through. But if I do anything like here, I'm saying 4 numbers. Meanwhile, in the format we entered, we said only 3 numbers. If I try to go, it says it doesn't match. So with this, you can also do something like this. Let me go and say, for our Nigerian number, this is how our Nigerian number starts with 0. It is only 0 to 9, that's digits. And we have it 11, right? We have 11 digits in our Nigerian phone number. So if I save now and go back, all right, so I can enter anything, all right. Once it is more than 11, it says please match the required format. So I can go back and count. I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. If I click now, it will submit because it matches the, okay, 11. Okay, I say 1, 2, how many numbers do I have? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, if I try to submit, it say match. Okay, let me check our format again. Oh, sorry. Oh, I did it. The number you have to be in curly brace like this, please. Okay, sorry. So what I'm saying here, I said I only want numbers, but they have to be 11 digits. Okay, so sorry about that. My bad. So if I go back now, I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It will submit because it matches the pattern. But if I do anything like, if I make it 12, it will not match the pattern. If I make it 10 or less than 11, it will not match the pattern. So, but don't worry, if you don't understand regular expression, we'll talk about, we've talked about it in JavaScript. So, but just understand the pattern, okay? Now, we also have the type for URL, all right? When you want to collect URL from users, use this type, all right? Because it will validate the URL, just like the email also validates URL, validates email. So if I go back to the code and I mark this thing as URL, watch, if I go back, save and go back to the browser, okay? If I enter anything that is not a URL, it will not submit. You say, please enter a URL. Okay, so it is validating it. So because we mark this input type to be URL, I must enter something that is like www.whatever.com. So this is a valid URL. So if I submit, okay, so all right, so it's not, so if I want to enter a valid URL, I'll say https colon this google.com. And if I submit, really, this is a valid URL now. Okay, let me copy this URL here. Oh, okay. Sorry, I did not remove the pattern. Sorry. Look at it. I did not remove the pattern. I'm sorry. I did not remove the pattern because I know that what I entered before was a valid URL, but it was working. The pattern was working against it. So you can also use this pattern for any type of input element at all. To if you want to restrict the input to a particular pattern, you can use that pattern. Okay. So I go back to the browser. I was wondering why is it not working? So if I do anything like www.whatever.com, it should go because this is a valid URL. Oops. Okay, let me copy this URL. All right, okay, okay, so this is a valid URL now. This is a valid URL. So the one I typed before, it didn't sit as a valid URL. So of course it should start with HTTP, whatever. Just let it be HTTP colon / it. Here now we are validating a URL. So if you want users to give you valid URLs, you should actually always use the type to be URL, okay? We also have the search type. Now, the search type is similar to the text input, but it is designed for search queries, and the browser displays them differently. So the only difference is just to change it to type, to search, all right? So if I go back now and say search, instead of URL, I will say it's going to be a search type, and I want you to watch carefully. So if I go now, once I start typing anything, look at it. It is giving me this close icon here. All right. And if this is on a mobile device, a user is using a mobile device, it would also instead of saying enter or go, all right, that keyboard on the keyboard, all right, the name will be search. So this is more of semantic HTML, and the browser has a different way of displaying it. So there is no more difference for you that is the developer, but for the person using it, there is a difference. They can see that they are searching for something, all right, and they can actually clear it. As they are searching, they can clear. And when they are using a mobile device and they are using the keyboard, on their keyboard, it will show differently. Okay, it will show differently. So if you want to search, if you want to use the text box for search, always use the search type. All right, it is more semantic than the normal one. All right. So we also have the color type. It is used for selecting colors. So if I go to my code and change this to color, here we are going to give the user an opportunity to select color. So if I go now, you can see it is displayed differently. If I click on it, it will give me colors to select. So if I say I want to select, I can go and do this. So once I do this, I can submit. Do you understand? All right. And this is the color. This is the value. All right. So, but don't worry, when we talk about form data API, you are going to see all these things on how to collect the data. But for now, we are seeing on how to do we collect data from users. Okay. All right. So we also have the date. So when you when you use this date, it will give you a calendar. So if I change it to date, all right, and save. If I go to the browser, you can see it is giving me a date, so I can select a date. and I can submit. All right. So that is it. We also have the month, week, time input. So this time I want you to do these ones yourself, okay? So I want you to experiment this, change the type to be month, change the type to be week, change the type to be time. I want you to experiment this on your own, all right? Month, week, and time inputs. I want you to experiment it on your own. I want to also experiment date and time. So this, you will see the difference. We had time type to be date before. This time it is date time. So this time it is date time local. So the difference is that, okay, let me just show you. Let me show you what the difference looks like. Instead of date, we are going to go with date time local. All right, date time. You can be date time or date time local, but the difference, if you say date time, okay, it will also show not just the date. Oh, okay, something is wrong. Date time local. Okay. If I save and go to the browser, you can see it is giving me both date and time. So if I select now, it's giving me the date and also the time. All right. It's giving me, so I can select. I can select whatever I want to select now. Do you understand? So my own time, if I refresh this, my time here is 2:54 p.m. All right. And the date is 8th of November. All right. So if you select, okay, you can see it has selected both the date and the time. All right, so that's the difference. All right. So we also have the range. All right, you can use it to it has the mean, it has the maximum, it has step, just like the number, the mean, the maximum, and step. And this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. So I can say the type is range. You can use it to give. So the type is range. All right. I can also say the mean, the mass, the step. All right. So if I say the mass is 10 and the mean, it will start from 2, and I can say the step is, let's say, 1, 2. So now if I go to the browser now, we make use of this more when we start writing code, okay? So I can actually drag, okay? Okay, look at it. I can actually drag. I can also even give it a value to start with, okay? So, and this, if I click, it is increasing by 1. Do you understand? It is increasing by 1 because the step is 1 and the maximum is 10, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for. So in the next session, we'll talk of more advanced input types, and we discuss them in their own. We'll talk about checkbox and everything about checkbox, the checkbox. We'll talk about the radio button. We discuss them in details on their own, okay, because we have a lot to talk about them. So thank you very much. I will see you in the next section.